Hope you're doing great. We got a new first up today, Quentimp123. Good morning, Quentimp. We love it. Daniel, awakening to the breakup, indeed. Lightning Vend, good morning. Waiting for the breakup, coffee, and the sun. T-Dog Yo-Yo, how's it going, my man? Good morning, gang. Aqualodge, we got a sun, we got a coffee, and we have a live long and prosper. One of my favorite sayings in the world. Good morning, Christine. Good morning, Thomas. You guys got the same ones, except the coffee is backwards here. So you guys are almost in sync this morning, right? Coffee before, but it's great. It's great. One comment after the other. Good morning. College is a scam. Just ask Randy Marsh from South Park. That's South Park episode, huh? Good morning, Orange Pill. What do we got here? A 400. We like that. We like that. Good morning, Sunshine. And Japan's debt problem just got worse. Buy Bitcoin. Indeed, Stephen. We saw that. We're not going to talk too much about Japan. Cal, what's up, my man? Good morning. Good afternoon from Ethiopia. Amazing. We love Ethiopia, Cal. Thanks for coming, my man. Ethiopia, one country on my bucket list for sure. I would like to visit both Kenya and Ethiopia in the short term. Let's have a cup of coffee, indeed, Joseph. P-Man, sup all. Hoddle T. Washington. Hope you're doing great. Morning, Breakup fan. Good morning, Wake and Breakers. I like that. That's good. Wake and Breakers. Real fun. Let me just tell you that I do have the start of maybe an earache or something. My ear feels a little weird this morning. It has been for a while. So we're just gonna tell you, just so you can chart the progress of this. But let me just acknowledge that we've got a major sunrise on our hands. It got a little dark, but a few seconds ago, it's really cool. I shared the picture on Twitter. Just the way the sun came up, there was like a gap between the clouds and the air or in the, high up. But out on the horizon, there were no clouds. So the sun kind of snuck through and beamed across the city, and it made the shadows of the skyscrapers on the mountain and everything. So go check out that picture. I couldn't get it. It was so cool in real life. The photo didn't quite do it justice, but major sunrise and Bitcoin's running, guys. Who would have thought, right? Everything's right in the world. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's not right in the world. So I guess not everything is right in the world. Many things are right. The things that matter are right in the world. There's other stuff that's not going so great. We're going to talk about that. But first, we got to talk about the fakest news I can find. All right, this is from NBC Bay Area. McDonald's and Chipotle Mexican Grill will raise their menu prices in California next year to offset the state's minimum wage increase for fast food workers. All right, so that's going to happen. And this one's great. This one's from the Washington Post. We have a bit of a thin Moscow time today, but we've made up for it in quality because the Washington Post has come and brought us one of the great headlines of all time. All right. This goes into their collection of how long we have to live in the world series, right? So this is what they say. Scientists used to avoid phrases like climate emergency and climate crisis. No longer. They were avoiding those like the plague, for sure. They never said climate emergency or climate crisis. What a big change scientists have experienced, according to the Washington Post. Escalating rhetoric comes as a new study shows. Here it is, guys. There's just 6 years left. We're down to 6 years left, okay, to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius at the current CO2 emissions rate. All right, guys, we're done. We got 6 years left, all right? So enjoy your time while you're here. According to the Washington Post, if we don't take care of this in 6 years, it's over. We're done, right? So don't worry about it. Live for the day. Live for the day. All right, so I don't know if you guys saw, but Elon Musk went on the Joe Rogan podcast to celebrate his 1 year acquisition of X, Twitter, whatever people call it. And it was a great show. I haven't seen it all, but I've seen already a bunch of the highlights. He gets Joe Rogan, or Joe Rogan is talking about the armored nature and the construction of the Cybertruck, the Cybertruck. So apparently Elon was pumping. Now, remember when everyone said, oh, Elon, we were even reading the fake news 2 days ago, right? The MIT engineer who was like, "Oh, here's how Twitter is going to break in the next week. You can't fire all these people." We've said it many times. Remember this. None of Elon Musk's companies have any marketing department whatsoever. He is the marketer. They don't buy advertisements. There's no Tesla car ad about some guy driving down the street. Check out my Tesla, bro. Like, they don't do any of those ads. It's just Elon Musk being Elon Musk. And it's always been that way. So the advertisements they are going to come out with for the Cybertruck are a Tommy gun shooting into the car, and it doesn't do anything, right? He's got a 9mm, a 45, just all the types of weapons that can't penetrate the actual frame of the Cybertruck. So Joe Rogan says, "Well, I bet I can do it. I got a 90-pound bow and arrow with, like, I don't understand what he was talking about the whole time about the specs of the bow and arrow, but he kept saying grain or something like that. I guess it's the spikes and its ability to penetrate. I'm not sure. I'm not a huge bow and arrow guy. They talked a little bit about the engineering of differences between crossbows and bow and arrows and bows and arrow. And I know Joe was explaining to him that I guess the actual string length, because of the bow, it's a lot bigger, and crossbows are often shorter, so they can't pack as much energy density. It was a pretty neat talk because you saw Joe Rogan, who has his understanding of the engineering, and it checked out as he was talking to one of the greatest engineers living. So Elon sort of understood the weight density and all that stuff I don't understand, right? So don't come here for mechanical physics 101. I did physics, but of all the hard sciences, physics was my least strong course. Math, probably my best, but I did okay. I wasn't a terrible physics student. I did get a 100% on my midterm one year, and that was pretty great. That helped the old average. A perfect score on something that was worth quite a bit for the overall grades. But anyway, not a huge physics, it's just not my thing. Engineering, all that stuff. So engineering a little better, but in the case of Elon Musk, of course, he's a self-trained engineer, right? He never went to school for that stuff. So they were talking about this stuff. So they actually got Joe Rogan to go into the garage where the Cybertruck was, right, and try and penetrate it with this bow and arrow. So he pulls it back, and it didn't work. It got a little dent in it. They talked a little bit about actually even building one of these cars, and Joe was like, "Why would you build a bulletproof car?" He's like, "Well, trucks are supposed to be tough." Right? That was Elon Musk's answer. How else do I prove these trucks are tough? And it's true. One of my friend's dads is a mechanic and a body shop guy. He always, did a lot of the insurance claims for body damage. He had a garage on his property and all that stuff. And he used to always get a kick out of these ads for cars where they like drop something, boom, they drop it into the cab of the car, right? Like big anvil or bowling balls, or it's like, those commercials that for bed mattresses when they're like, "Look at this bed mattress, it can bounce a bowling ball." And everyone in Japan who has 800 years experience in making their futon beds on the ground are like, "What are you doing?" What are you even talking about, right? Our stupid bed technology in North America. One of the worst parts of North American culture, by the way, is the bed technology. Just terrible, like the worst. Europe, not great either, but America is in a league of its own as far as bad bed technology. That it can't get worse. The best beds in the world that I've seen, and I still use them, are Japanese beds. I buy Japanese from Japan. I order them from Japan. They're the best. Not even close, right? Japanese have figured out a long time ago bed technology. So they shoot the arrow, and it was a lot of fun. And that was just one part. So this thing is going viral. People are talking about it. But one of the interesting things that came of it, right, was Elon just answering the question why he bought it. Like, why'd you buy X, right? Remember all the mind reading, right? The mind reading that went on by the fake news. Oh, Elon bought it because he's lonely or some shit, or like he wants to troll people, right? Remember all the stories that were written about how everyone could peer into Elon Musk's mind, right? Because it's so easy for every journalist to understand what's going on in Elon Musk's mind, right? I just love it's like a dog trying to understand what a human is thinking, because someone with like a 110 IQ doesn't even understand the difference that someone with an IQ like Elon Musk has. Like, I don't know what his IQ is. Let's say it's a 150 or 180. It's the same as a dog looking at a human child and an adult and thinking they're the same. They don't really understand. There's no context for how different a child and an adult can be. For a dog, they're just all humans. Maybe taller, they could probably estimate that, but that's the end of it, right? Now, it's the same thing when you get these mid-wit journalists trying to diagnose anything that Elon Musk has. They're like a dog. It's the same thing. There's the same gap in IQ. Like, what's a dog's IQ? 30 or something, right? So, 30 to like 110 or whatever, right? They can't tell the difference. It all kind of looks the same, right? If you have a 30 IQ, and I'm just totally making up what a dog's IQ is. I have no idea. I don't even know if you can measure it, right? But let's just say it's like, what's the functional, like, can't take care of yourself for humans is like 70, right? If you have like a 70 IQ, even the military says, we don't want you. There's nothing, you're not even good for cannon fodder. We can't do anything with you with that 70 IQ, right? So I don't know what the actual formula is, but again, right, a dog can't tell the difference between a human with a 110 IQ and a 70 IQ. They look the same to a dog. There's 40% gap, and then 110 isn't even that smart, right? So if it's like 70 and 120, which is pretty average, right? There's still a huge gap that a dog would not be able to perceive, and that's 50 points. Now put the 50 points on top of the 120 and you get to 170, right? So they can't tell the difference. So watching these mid-wit 110 IQ journalists trying to mind read Elon Musk is the same, to me anyway, as a dog trying to mind read a human. It doesn't work. They're not capable, right? So Elon finally shared why he bought it, and it's a beautiful answer, so I've got to read it, right? Charlie Kirk brings it to us. He says, a year after Elon Musk bought Twitter, he finally explains why. He says that a niche ideology that turned San Francisco into a zombie apocalypse would historically be geographically isolated, and the fallout would therefore be limited. But Twitter gave that philosophy an information technology weapon, which it could use to spread the mind virus to the whole planet unopposed. Musk said, in order for the mind virus to propagate, it must suppress opposing viewpoints. Rogan says, because it doesn't stand up against scrutiny. Musk says, correct. Musk cared enough about stopping this virus that he spent $44 billion to do so. They go a little bit more into the death cult around this, the end of civilization. He says Les Knight says that there are 8 billion people on the planet, but he wishes there were none. And Elon says, well, he can go to hell and he can start with himself. Very good answer, right? That's what I've said for a long time about the Malthusian people. Well, go to Canada, all right? Move to Canada and say to the Canadians, I don't want to live anymore, okay? And they'll help you out. You need to access Canadian healthcare if you have any trouble, right? That's the new line, by the way. It's not apply for MAID. It's, you really should access Canadian healthcare. You should just go access it. You can access Dutch healthcare if you'd like. You can access Belgian healthcare if you'd like, right? All these healthcares go. They all work for me, for you, right? They're good for you, right? Go for it. Have fun, right? Now, I don't mean breakup people, so I don't want to say you as in breakup people. So let's take that spell away. But what we're talking about here is, welcoming people to do this. Don't oppose them. If they want to access Canadian healthcare because they're worried about the future, be my guest, right? But this mind virus thing, to me, actually, is the perfect contrast. So while Elon Musk is doing this, simultaneous, you had Balaji Srinivasan in Amsterdam running his own show called The Network State. So it kind of irks me that we didn't do these things, because we just did our show in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago, and he was one of my keynotes, but blah, blah, blah. Anyway, his prediction in The Network State has been this for a long time, right? The predicate of the book was always this, that red and blue, that the political divide in America is going to switch to green and orange. It's going to switch, and the ultimate fight that Balaji Srinivasan has been calling for a long time is ultimately woke versus Bitcoin, right? That's what Balaji's been saying for a long time. Balaji has been saying that the reorientation of the political divide and the contrast over which World War III will be fought psychologically and economically is woke versus Bitcoin. So when Balaji first said that 2 or 3 years ago, it still was only a bit murky and we weren't quite there, right? But now that he's doing this network state, remember, Balaji has been hyping and pumping Bitcoin maximalism, toxic maximalism in his idea here because of the following. He believes that Bitcoin is also a virus, right? And spreads through this psychological standing that maxis have, and that they are indeed toxic to anyone who sees the world in a different way, right? So it's an actual clash. Now, here's what Eric Wall says, and because this is what we're down to, right? We're down to the ability for the woke mind virus to propagate, right? And it propagates very well within the fiat nodes of top-down structure and credentialism and expert citation and all that. Those are all the avenues through which the woke mind virus can be distributed and propagate, right? But remember, just as Elon Musk said, it required the tuning of the entire internet. They had to tune the internet in order to suppress any opposition because it is actually weak against opposition. It's like one of these viruses where the cure is not that complicated. It's like in the same way that we've been suffering from COVID medical malpractice, in the sense that we don't know if the cheap treatments were much better because everyone was incentivized in the system, in this top-down credentialist system, to sell us the most expensive treatment, right? It's the same with cancer, right? Do we have any confidence that we haven't figured out cancer yet? People have been talking about fenbenazole for a while now, and the ivermectin and all that kind of stuff. But we just don't have any confidence that anyone has even looked into this stuff because it's so cheap, right? So the financial incentives and the follow the money piece is really important. But go back to what Elon said about the woke mind virus not being able to sustain any criticism, and that stunts its virality, right? That it's almost curable with not too much trouble. As long as a bit of light gets in, it can disinfect the situation and create something better. But contrast, so the propagation of the woke mind virus, and contrast that to Bitcoin. And this is what Eric Wall said yesterday. Says, I understand some people don't love Eric Wall, but he is a smart guy, and I thought he wrote one of the better birthday cards or whatever for Bitcoin yesterday. Of course, we're talking about the virality of the white paper and its propagation as a type of virus, right? So this is what he says. 15 years of Bitcoin, my celebration is the following. It's crazy how many academic papers there are, how many ideas are conceived, and how many of them fall out of history, never to be remembered, never to make a dent on the course of history. Our world doesn't seem like a place where an email on a cryptographic mailing list can really make a dent in this world. No matter how cool of an idea you may have for some distributed system, it's never going to be the type of thing that could ever really become talked about in the mainstream, let alone become a new asset listed on the same finance pages as oil, stocks, or gold. These clever ideas usually stay a curiosity, something talked about in small circles. They're not the type of stuff that will get commemorated in art and songs, embraced by countries, feared by politicians, and hated by journalists. The kind of stuff never gets any recognition at all. Yet, there were some crazy believers out there that dared to believe that this could be different. This could be a paper that actually does make a difference. This could be that long shot idea that actually breaks through the resistance. This could be the idea that makes bankers shake and quake in their boots and central bankers twist and turn in their temples. In 2008, humankind did not seem like the kind of place that would embrace an idea like Bitcoin. The modern world wasn't some ancient Greece where philosophical ideas were exchanged and listened to. We were already on the fast track towards idiocracy by then. For me, it took 6 years from the first time I heard about it until I allowed myself to actually believe that it could change the world. Until then, it had been a pet theory, something that felt possible, but something my brain didn't dare to believe. But Bitcoin really did become that idea. It's one of those rare, once-in-a-generation type of things where the good guys win, the good idea wins. What happened 15 years ago with Bitcoin is the kind of stuff for history books. The journey it has taken from a PDF, it's a PDF, it's just a PDF, right? To where it is today is one of the most insane things to have ever occurred in our lives. It's already one of the most insane things that has ever happened, right? That's what people are talking about when they say love Bitcoin. Of course, no one loves Bitcoin. What people love is the idea that a good underdog idea can win and that those in power can be forced to listen. People love the goodness of mankind that drive folks to work on conceiving ideas like this. People love the madness and bravery involved among those who dared to bet on this. How satisfying isn't it when that? How satisfying isn't it then that all of this? Okay, well, bad writing, Eric. Should have edited it. Happened to someone who also honored their idea so greatly. Satoshi never spent a penny of their own invention and never once tried to claim credit for it under their real name. They honored it by keeping their identity hidden, even after the invention had become worth billions, trillions. Fuck yeah, it is the kind of thing worthy of poems and songs. Bitcoin is that one time it went right. It doesn't happen that often. Happy birthday, Bitcoin. So great note from Eric Wall, I would say, right? And indeed, the important point that I want to draw out of this is the virality. This came from a PDF. This isn't a system that required the entire internet to be tricked out in order to maintain its mirage. And just as Elon said, it doesn't take much to break something that is such a psychological construct as this fiat industrial complex, right? So contrasting the virality of the woke mind virus, which is a real thing, it is viral. It's preying on people every day. It's ruining lives around the world. It's probably the most negative force going. It's the reason why Elon Musk was willing to spend $40 billion to stop it, to vaccinate people, to allow some form of counterpoint to be injected into the system to fight against the virality of the woke mind virus. But indeed, go back to what Balaji was saying. The ultimate fight is between the viral reach of Bitcoin versus the mind virus, right? That's the fight we're engaged in. How far and fast can Bitcoin propagate, and can it move faster in order to take over minds than this other woke thing, right? So what's the answer? Well, look, Bitcoin has done what it's done out of being a PDF. It's been done without any top-down coordination. It's been done in the true spirit of Bitcoin, bottom up. There's no censorship industrial complex getting me to help talk about Bitcoin every morning, right? This is all organic. This is all bottom up. This is all influenced by people making their own decisions, following their own sort of energy monsters and trying to get out of what they want in their own personal journey in this world, right? And that's what's driving most Bitcoiners. It is this bottom-up sense that if they keep pushing individually, they can actually change the entire world. And Bitcoiners, I think, are optimistic for that reason. And that's why, Balaji, Elon, everyone yesterday talking about the optimism thing that Mark Andreessen has put forward, right? The techno-optimist manifesto that he shared, right? Elon Musk saying yesterday, optimism is better than pessimism. People saying it's kind of funny that we've all just joined this optimism club. Now, I've been describing myself as a techno-optimist for a long time, right? Now, I wouldn't say I'm the same type as Mark Andreessen. I don't think it's all like about, algorithmic, blah, blah, blah. But, that's a big part of it. So you've got this contrast between a PDF, which has been propagated by normal people just doing their stuff, right? And the virality of it is clear. I've described it as a virus many times. A fellow named Michael Perklin infected me with Bitcoin obsession, right? Michael Perklin worked for Shapeshift for years with Voorhees, Eric Voorhees. He was one of the forensic auditors that would look into like Mt. Gox in the early days. He worked out of Decentral where the whole scene in Toronto got going. And he was one of the first people. I remember I went to him in like 2015. I was like all excited about something Ethereum related, right? And he's like, hey, just be happy that we have one network that's actually running, and that's Bitcoin. And I hadn't really thought of it like that yet, right? And anyway, to this day, that was one of the more important things that ever happened to me personally to understand what's going on here. So again, the idea that Bitcoin can propagate with this virality is a race between that and the woke mind virus. So exactly what Balaji predicted a while ago, right? Now the network state argument here that the orange versus green, the fiat world, the woke financed fiat world versus the Bitcoin world, that things move into this political contrast, we can already see it, right? The top-down nature. And the reason I bring it up is because of this new AI executive order. Have you seen this thing, this AI executive order? All right. So what's going on with the AI executive order? Well, they're going to make the AI woke as shit. Right? It's just stupid woke AI, right? This is what they've decided to do. All right. This is what they've decided to do. So if the AI doesn't believe in advanced equity and civil rights, if it doesn't, if it like advantages white people, for example, no good. I'm just guessing, but that's what the logic says. Christopher Ruffo says President Biden has signed an executive order that will require AI companies to address algorithmic discrimination and ensure that AI advances equity. They want to embed the principles of CRT and DEI into every aspect of AI. Now, this is something that Mike Benz has been predicting, right? He's been predicting that censorship will move to the middleware services. And that's exactly what AI would be in this case, right? AI would be the ultimate algorithmic interference pattern that could actually pipe even more woke mind virus into people's brains, like direct line into people's brains, right? So there's been a lot of funny comments about it, right? You've got Jeff Garzig saying this is yet again a familiar pattern of acting first from the executive branch. People naively want a chieftain king, and Biden admin happily supplies rule by executive fiat achieved through arcane legal positioning. It feels like a return to the 90s. So the whole thing is like, if you run too much computing power, right? No good. So whitelisted US government big corp friends have no limits on GPO cycle count or perimeter count. Plebs must make do with lesser models, just like in the early 1990s encryption, where 40-bit and below where weak encryption was exportable outside of the United States. So it's the same blueprint. Now, I've often used this exact frame, what's going on with AI and this making part of it illegal. That's what the cypherpunks believed already years ago, right? The idea here being that cryptography after World War II was counted as ammunition, counted as bombs, right? You couldn't export it, you couldn't commercially develop it. Nothing was able to come out of the private sector for that reason. And it stayed that way until the 80s and 90s, when a lot of this stuff got debated with the Clipper chip and government oversight. Do they get a back door into the microchips? Of course, it didn't work out for them, we think. So from there, the argument here that this thing can stay top down is what we're dealing with. But the good news is the following, right? So as this is going on, as you're hearing about America trying to take one of the most important industries in the world and turn it into woke crap garbage, right? You get these stories where they're going to be building. Remember what they did for pirate radio years ago to get out of like the broadcast rules that first went into the propagation of radio, where they would go make these like rigs out at sea and broadcast into places because they were no longer within the jurisdiction of the federal or state authorities that would police and monitor what goes on to what frequency. Because of course, the way radio works, right? You pick a frequency and that's your road, basically, right? You hit that frequency and you broadcast and people tune their thing. You guys know the history of radio, by the way? It's an amazing thing. How Tesla invented it. It's remarkable. I'll tell it for 1 second. So, of course, Nikola Tesla invented the radio, right? And it wasn't Marconi, or they all copied it. He just didn't, he was too lazy to go and get the patent for it, I think. What it was the following. So he came from like the Serbia area and all that, and Orthodox family. The dad wanted him desperately to go into the Orthodox church to be a priest. He refused, and he almost died. He came down with a super illness when he was supposed to be going to his religious school. And more or less on his deathbed, he got his dad to agree to not send him to that school, and he got better right away. Now, the reason I mention that is because he said he took after his mother more. Now, his mother was like a genius seamstress and stuff like that. And did you know that computer coding, actually punch cards and all that, comes from the actual early looms, right? The binary decisions of red or blue threads that you'd use to stitch things in the early industrial revolution to make actual fabric when the fabric industry took off. The pedals they would use in the looms were the original punch cards. So looming work, right? Looms, textiles, all that stuff, deciding which fabric went in is actually where computers come from, right? Binary decisions, turning things into binary comes from the fabric industry. Not a lot of people know that, right? But it does. The early computers are entirely based off the early looms, and that's where punch cards come from. It doesn't go onto a microchip for about 100 years. But the idea of punch cards come directly from the loom. So his mother, right? His mother was one of these ladies that could like tie an eyelash into a knot with her fingers. She was like really good at this seamstress stuff, and which was highly technical. That's what the reason I mentioned this, right? It's as close as you can come in the Industrial Revolution to being like a computer gadget type of person, right? With like micro technology. So that's what she did. She was like a micro technology world person. And he always said that he and she were on the same frequency, unlike his father, who was into religion. So here's the thing. When he went to America and she died, the night she died, she visited him in his dreams. And he had the idea for the radio right there. He said, I get it. You have to tune to a frequency. My mom and I are on the same frequency. And that's how we can communicate across the planet. So he said, what you need is a broadcast signal and a tuner to get to the right frequency. And that was the invention of the radio, right? That the person receiving the signal could tune to the frequency that the person was transmitting on. And that was the big invention. And from that's how we got it. Literally the night his mother died is how the radio was invented. An amazing story, right? So I mention all of that because this radio frequency thing with the AIEO, right, the AI executive order, is going to cause pirate radio type stations built off land. They're going to put these things out in the water. There'll be ships, there'll be whatever, but we're already seeing them. These things can use nuclear power to power themselves, and they will not act under any state supervision. So how many of these things can be sprung up? I don't know, maybe a lot, but Brian Romelli was shared that they're already happening, and that the moment this thing happened with the AIEO, you saw some of these big companies saying, oh, this is what we're going to do, right? This is what we're going to do. So I think it works, right? I think it could probably go that way. And we're probably going to have to make it go that way, right? Like with the idea that Christopher Rufo says here, imagine a computer code Ibram Kendi installed directly into your operating system forever, right? So this is how all of these things are going to have to function and work if this thing, really goes through. Shriram Krishnan, who is with A16Z, says the following: 2 observations. There's a distinct vibe shift, right? That means a lot of people are going to go and look for this kind of stuff. There is no longer people on the cutting edge of LLMs believe that this should be regulated, right? An incorrect perception. There's no one is really saying it needs to be that needs to happen anymore. So we'll see, right? We'll see. But here's what it asks them to do, just so you know, right? Biden's new EO wants the feds to tackle abuses by AI, algorithmic discrimination, displacement of workers, equity, while simultaneously requesting the Department of Homeland Security to come up with ways to streamline immigration pathways for foreigners working on AI. You can't make this up. So that all of that stuff and this censorship thing that comes on top of it, and this whole middleware piece. You can see Mike Benz yesterday was with Judge Napolitano. So he was with Judge Napolitano, who will become an important person in the election as we go forward, because I believe Trump has told this judge exactly what he knows about the Kennedy assassination, because this judge has been sharing with the public that Trump told him in the last days of his election. So that's an important thing, right? He was on Judge Napolitano. So Mike Benz continuing to really rise up and become much more significant. I think he's the clearest person on any of this stuff. I believe he'll be at Bitcoin 2024. I've been talking to him, emailing. I have his phone number. We're going to talk. It should work out. So here's what he says, right? The judge asked him, what is the worst thing the government does to suppress speech? And the answer is simple, right? The government's creation of the whole of society censorship Leviathan is what his answer was. And when he says, remember, whole of society is the official framework for joining government, private sector, civil society, and media fact-checking orgs into a unified censorship network. And indeed, he looks at some of the propaganda that's been issued along these lines to people working on the front lines of this for the top-down fiat government. And it's exactly that. It's a whole of society effort, they say, exactly like you would describe a war effort of sorts, right? So here's what he says, and he keeps calling the foreign policy blob, right? How the blob got into the censorship business. So you have the State Department, Defense Department, CIA nexus around controlling information flows to stop the rise of populist political candidates who would undermine the foreign policy consensus, right? That's his sort of underlining of what's going on and his assessment, right? And that's what we saw. If you go back to the interview with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, that's exactly what they talked about. So, and by the way, it was such a great interview because Joe Rogan's got his costume on the whole time. So it looked like history, but it was a historically significant interview, right? And it's going to stay so, even though Joe Rogan's got this awesome Puerto Rico baseball shirt on and a wig. But here's what he said, and I think this is one of the important parts that's going to help change the dialogue so that it is woke versus Bitcoin. The blue and red thing dying a quick death, because this is what he says. He says, the degree to which Twitter was simply an arm of the government was not well understood by the public. It was a state publication. Republicans were suppressed at 10 times the rate of Democrats, is what he was saying in the interview, right? So there you go. They also talked about Hunter Biden's artwork, right? He says that seems unlikely to be a legit transaction. Oh, by the way, Hunter Biden recording a very weird thing yesterday, if anyone saw it. He's recording his own face and not speaking into the camera and just doing like a roundabout, right? A lot of people commenting like, is he okay? Obviously, he's not okay. Who knows what's going on? We found out yesterday, of course, that the Chinese were just loaning him all that money. They loaned him $250,000. So they're trying to explain away the money as just like, oh, it's just a loan. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. It's just a loan, right? No, well, hold on. Someone's saying he turned it off. Yeah, you don't really need to watch the whole interview, I don't think. I don't tend to watch entire Joe Rogan episodes. Just a couple interviews that were fine, extremely peaceful. And to the extent that it's relevant to what we're talking about, never forget, right? Elon Musk is one of the largest Bitcoin holders in the world, right? So anytime we're talking about Elon Musk, whether we like everything he says or not, he's still a Bitcoiner, right? If he's a Bitcoiner like you or like me, I don't think it matters. He owns more Bitcoin than I own. So, right, I'll listen to him, right? I'll listen to anyone who has more Bitcoin than me, right? Anytime, right? Anytime. So, except unless if it's Hunter Biden, right? I probably won't listen to him. So they started talking as well, of course, about the Missouri case, where we are talking about the government being having to prove its innocence, let's say, to the Supreme Court about these things, because that's what the Supreme Court is going to adjudicate on. And when I say the government, I mean the federal government. And Elon says the government itself is not allowed to censor speech, but in my view, the government de facto did censor speech, right? Which is what he's talking about. Right now, X is the only one that is not kowtowing to government. And he also had some words for George Soros in the interview. He says that, in my opinion, he fundamentally hates humanity, which I think most of us have come to the conclusion, and we agree. So we also had Tucker Carlson doing his show yesterday, talking again about a lot of the stuff. It was Nigel Farage on the show yesterday. He had about 10 million viewers already before I talked about it. And this is about the war funding, right? They had this whole thing about how is it that we are marching towards war? And again, they talked a lot about the censorship stuff. They talked a lot about the banking piece, where, of course, Nigel Farage, the most famous, other than Kanye West, unbanked person in the world right now. So between these two things, right, between the war funding and AI and the censorship piece on top of it, it looks like we have the potential to repolarize American politics and get rid of the left and right polarization and embrace much more of the orange and green story, which I think has been the truth for a while, because the orange and green fight, the woke mind virus versus the Bitcoin virus, really is about rich and poor, top down, bottom up. It's nothing to do with do you like trans people or not? Do you hate black people? Right? Like, there's nothing in there for that. That's all invented, made up shit, so that people don't really see what divides them. Right? That's how I see it. So, there you go. A daylight saving. No, I don't think we changed our. Did you change your time in Europe? Bitcoin graffiti? I don't know. Maybe you did. All right. What else do I got here that we want to talk about? Really, it is just about the virus and the race of these viruses. You can see the virus when you look at this Israel thing and the Hamas thing right now, right? You go into any of these spaces and you're listening to the Hamas people, right? Not the Hamas people. You're listening to the Western people talk about Hamas thing. Their minds can't even talk about any of the stuff. Like, it's no big deal, right? It's just, oh, everyone's been bad to these people, and that's the context. And here's how far the mind virus goes, right? Here's how far the mind virus goes. This is proof that it's a mind virus, as far as I can tell. It's the coalition that you see and the ideological tenets of everyone in this left-wing coalition being impossible to actually keep together. They actually do hate each other, right? Only a fictitious layer of hatred and manipulation on top can force these people to be on the same team. Because the idea, look at it, free Palestine is a feminist issue, is it? I want all the feminists. The Tim Pool has been gathering money to send Megan Rapinoe, the soccer player, to go do a pride parade in Gaza. I hope she does. I hope she gives it a shot. Let's do a pride parade in Gaza and see how that goes for you. Go be gay in Gaza. Go. It would be great. I want to know what happens. Maybe they'll embrace you. Maybe it'll be great, right? So these things, right, where it's free Palestine is a feminist issue, it's a reproductive rights issue, it's an indigenous rights issue, it's a climate justice issue, it's a queer rights issue, it's an abolitionist issue. Right? How can you explain how you put all of these things together and think it's the same problem? It's not, right? We get Mike Nana, who talks a little bit about what this actually means, right? Like many words in the internet area, the term ideology has gotten flabby. It's commonly used to describe any collection of political ideas at all, but this bloated definition deprives us of an important tool for pointing at a particularly destructive form of thinking. In its narrow sense, an ideology is a set of political stories a group of people tell to facilitate mass action. They're quasi-religious oversimplifications of reality that possess dogmatic believers to interpret themselves and the world around them through a fixed schema. In his book, Alien Powers, Kenneth Minogue studied a range of different ideologies as an attempt to identify their constant features. He saw them as part philosophy, part science, and part spiritual revelation that offers believers a sense of purpose in overcoming oppression. And this is what he calls them. Minogue called these educators custodians of ideological consciousness, and they're an unmistakable feature of the woke movement, which found its early success in developing teaching methods and adapting educational institutions to their consciousness-raising efforts. Indeed, the term woke itself was coined by its true believers, and it refers to the feeling of awakening from a false consciousness to see the hidden systems of oppression they believe govern the world. What differentiates woke identitarian ideology from its predecessors is the fluidity of its oppressed class. They have tenaciously adapted the core doctrines of systemic oppression through all kinds of their different operating systems. And that's what it comes down to, this victimhood mentality. Right? Because indeed, that's how you divide people between, instead of rich and poor, the way to do it is to say, hey, those people have your stuff, right? Like if I want to keep people from looking at me, what I would say is, hey, they have your stuff. Go get it from them. I don't have your stuff, right? I don't have it, right? But that's why you get this race black-white thing, right? Or the Hamas-Israel thing, right? It's one group saying, hey, they have your stuff. Go get it. Right? Go get your stuff. Now, Bitcoiners are not saying that, right? It's the same thing. I would say everything this guy said here about educators, ideology, Bitcoin, of course, is quasi-religious. Of course it is. It's for sure, right? It's a worldview. So of course it is. But the difference here is that the custodians of ideological consciousness go back to exactly what Elon Musk said. They must suppress any opposition because the ideas don't hold up against scrutiny. It's a weak religion. It is a weak ideology, and it must be fluid because that's the only way it can survive, right? It's got to rehybridize all the time. Whereas Bitcoiners have been saying consistently the same thing for 15 years now. Nothing has changed. We are still looking at the Genesis block saying, hey, you got it right? Chancellor's on the brink. We got to stop this. We got to separate money and state. The worldview of Bitcoiners hasn't changed at all since the start. And if anything, we've accelerated. We're faster and closer to the world that Bitcoiners said we had to go through to come to a Bitcoin standard to separate money and state. We're on the same road. We haven't deviated at all. We're doing the same jobs we said we'd be doing 10 years ago. For people like me who joined this at the time, right? I've been going through this whole year, 2023, the 10 years since this is what I do with my time and with my life. And I've been living through the fake news of the crash of 2013. Oh, Bitcoin's dead. Don't worry, right? All that stuff. And so the world we predicted would be here, right? Just as Eric Wall said, the world we predicted, which seemed like it had no possibility, really, if you look at it, like you said, we were on our way to idiocracy. But in other ways, we were already living in Francis Fukuyama's end of history. Like the liberal system was unopposed and didn't look like we needed anything. You know how hard it was to explain to Canadians that they might turn off your bank account 10 years ago? We lived in a civilized world with freedom of speech and all this shit, right? No, we didn't. We've been living in this dystopia for a long time now. And we probably haven't been living in the country we thought since Kennedy was dead, at least. It might go back to World War I, right? But we're in a race. We're in a race for the virality of these two worldview systems. It is the network state. It is Bitcoiners' ability to not have to readjust. Did Bitcoiners adjust at all for COVID? No. We had the mindset to understand what COVID was from the start. Not that we had the right answers at all. We still don't have the right answers. We still don't know about this or that. But the instinct to not trust anyone, right, because none of them were trustable, was the right one. Now, it's an easy one to say. But again, go back to the educator part, right? Because that's what this guy is saying has allowed the mind virus to perpetuate. It is an education, right? The universities 10 years ago when Bitcoin started still seemed like the place you had to convince to get movement and change and education. But this is lost territory. It ain't coming back. The universities are not going to survive this, I don't think, right? So you get the failure universities. And now with this, the posters being taken off at all the colleges in America, the college just identity is going in the toilet, which is good, it sounds bad, but it's actually good, right? And then go back to this custodians of ideological consciousness, this educators part, which continues to be the most important part of universities, and why I say the Bitcoin meetup culture, the P2P information environment, that Bitcoiners share information. We've created these events. We've got the meetup culture. We've done more to propagate an understanding of information laundering, the censorship industrial complex, the failure of universities, the failure of the media. We've understood this stuff way better than anyone else in the market, and we don't need to adjust as we find ourselves catapulting towards World War III. We had already understood the battleground before. This is a psychological and economic war. We have the means to win. We have the means to navigate the war because our worldview is grounded in a form of reality. And because of that, we have the necessary feedback, the necessary head on a swivel to survive in this battle, because it is psychological and it is economic. And the people who don't understand that part of World War III are in for a punch in the face. And we got to keep our efforts up and push this virus faster, because it's a race now. It is an actual race between woke, COVID fear virus versus Bitcoin and personal responsibility virus. It's a virus, and we got to win, because if we don't win, it is over. It's done. We're done. But we can't, if they tune this AI the way they're talking about, there will be no breaking of the spell. AI will be too good at it. And I can't imagine we're going to get out of this unless you have your own AI, but that's what it's saying you can't have, right? It's a race. I think we're going to win. I think we already won, but that's just me. All right. Let's see what other people are saying. That's how they advertised the original Casio G-Shock in Japan, driving a 25-ton truck over it. Very cool. Well, I mean, that's what you want, right? I will access Gulag healthcare long before I access parasitical. Dylan LeClaire in the house, 100%. Probably talking about mind virus stuff. Bitcoin Standard is a good daily mental hygiene practice. Very good. Very good. AI meddling will accelerate decentralization of AI models. That's what I think. AI will be Bitcoined. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the only way to tune Bitcoin, to make it alive. You should listen to the thing we did at Bitcoin 2023 with Ter Demister, all about metabolism. This Dem government is hell-bent on turning the U.S. into a communist state. Looks like it. Yeah, looks like it. I turned it off after 10 minutes. That's the e-truck thing. Oh, boy. Yeah, you used to be on at 1,400, and I guess I'm on at 100 if you fell back already. I think we still fall back this year, though. We asked... this weekend for US. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's funny that you can't be anti-Israel or anti-Hamas and anti-Western intervention. Must be on one side of the manufactured conflict. Yeah, it looks like it, Tommy. There is, like, I've come to the opinion now that if you want to actually have a real opinion on the Israel-Hamas thing, you've got to be willing to say how many dead children you're willing to live with. There's no, the children are dying. And anyone who's out there saying, I don't want kids to die, don't listen. They're not participating in the conversation. Right? That's not it. There is no option. It's like with the Bitcoin engineering thing, right? You don't get to have credible and convenient. Unfortunately, with what we have in the Middle East, anyone whose opinion is I'm against kids dying, well, please go access Canadian healthcare, because there's no other. You don't get that choice. You don't get that choice. It's war. There's no easy choices. So what do? You know, you can't. You can ignore it, I suppose, but then, you know, you can't be a P-man. Unfortunately, there is no such side as that. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and say kill kids, right? That's not what I'm saying. But saying I'm not, so I agree. I wish I'm on the magical side of no war, right? I'm on the magic side of no war. I magically want no war, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is there's a war and kids are dying and kids are being used as all these things on either level. So in the end, you got to actually come up with a number, right? What's your number? It's hard. It's a hard truth, right? I haven't come up with my number yet. I don't know what my number is, but it's gonna happen, right? So Putin said yesterday his number is reached, right? That's what Putin said. Putin came and gave an interview and said he watched the children. His number's there. Now it's propaganda, but what's his real number? There's a real number there somewhere. So I wish it was simple. I wish we could say the magic answer, I'm against kids dying. But these aren't normal kids, and it's war. It's war. War ain't fun. You know, all these war crimes, I guess they're going to charge Israel war crimes or something, Turkey. Well, guess what war is? What war didn't have war crimes? All of them. All. So it's war. It's no fun. Yeah, same. Of course, P-Man, we got to get through this. You know, like I believe the tragedy that's happening there will help change the world for the better. But currently, now it's okay to not want to participate in this debate. What I'm saying is, to participate, you have to have a number. You cannot participate. That's okay, right? But this whole thing where people say, "Oh, I'm against kids dying," that's how we got into this problem in the first place, with these easy answers. That's not an answer, and they can't come here, and they can't go anywhere else. The Middle East doesn't want them. These kids, what do you do with them, right? I don't have an answer. I just know that if I was involved in debating this with someone who is following this all day, I would feel like I need a number in order to have an opinion. Like Israel can do this, okay, but what's the number, right? 69 babies is my number. Yeah. It's a number, dude. It's a number. It works. It works. It works. But it's impossible to not, it's impossible to be on the good side, I guess is what I'm saying, of the debate, right? Every opinion comes with a dead baby number. That's it, right? You can't say it on one side or the other and say like I'm against babies dying, so I'm with Israel. Right? You can't say that. Or I'm against babies dying, so I'm with Hamas, right? They're all killing babies. It's a baby killing party, right? Unfortunately, it's the worst thing you can say, but that's what it is. That's how far this thing has gone. Now, it's unrecognizable to most people around the world, but this is what we haven't seen war in a long time. It's not fun. It's this bad. It's this bad. And here it is. So, yeah, no one is thinking critically about 10-7. Exactly. Like no one is sitting there saying, what's the best thing for the world, right? A bunch of Israeli parents want to kill, and a bunch of Palestinian parents want to kill. So, and they don't care if it's babies. The babies are already on the casualty list. So it's not fun, guys. I hate talking about it. And there's nothing you can really say that's comforting. It's as dark and disgusting as it all sounds. Like I said, I haven't come up with my number yet. I'm still, fog of war is a real thing. Yeah. I'm still, trying to process it all. Joe Rogan was fun. Elon did the right thing. He said he's the only one Google, Facebook. Yeah, they're losers. And again, which history books are we going to read? I think we're going to read the history book where everyone's like, can you believe Joe Rogan wore a wig? And otherwise, they're not going to be able to air it. It's just going to get forgotten. All right, team. That's all I got for today. Hope I didn't miss anything. All right. Peace, everyone. Enjoy your day.